Welcome to another episode of the Meal Prep Monday podcast. I'm your host and founder of Prep Dish, Allison Schaaf. Today, I am talking about habits. I'm doing a little refresh about prompts I use in my life to instill some new healthy habits. I considered titling this episode Ways I Trick Myself into Being Healthier, but we'll stick with a habit refresh for today. And before I get into the content, I have an email from Prep Dish subscriber Shannon. Shannon writes, "For the past 4 months, my husband and I have been diligently prepping our meals together every Sunday for the week ahead. With busy children and our full-time work schedules, I cannot believe how much less busy and stressful the weeknight dinner routine has been. I am loving that. And one thing I hadn't expected was the fun time together my husband and I now share prepping for the week. It's a great time to catch up. The next step is getting the kids to participate in the meal prep so they can learn how to make their own lives less busy when they have families of their own." Shannon, thank you so much for sharing. I am so glad to hear that you've come up with a routine that works for you. I love that you and your husband are doing it together and using that time to bond and connect and kind of have that go-to slot to, get you ready for the week ahead. And I hope you're able to get the kids involved when you're ready. If you are listening to this and have not tried Prep Dish, I encourage you to go to prepdish.com/MPM, short for Meal Prep Monday, and we have set up a special 2-week free trial. You get to try the service for 14 days, no cost. You'll have access to a login on the website. You can poke around, look at all of the different meal plan options we have, everything from super fast, low carb, paleo, gluten-free. Super fast are just those healthy, family-friendly meals. So if you're wanting to try this out in your life, see if it works for you, then go to prepdish.com/MPM. That link is always listed out in the show notes as well. Okay, so let's get started on today's episode. I have talked a lot in the past about habits on this podcast, and I made a note. So if you go back, we are on episode, we're up in the 200s at this point. And back in like the 70s range, I did a whole mini series or kind of mega series on habits and creating new habits in your life. They were specific around meal prep, but also applicable to any sort of habit that you're wanting to instill. The episode that I think covers this topic of prompts specifically is episode 77. So if you want to get a deeper dive after listening to this today, you might want to head back to 77 and some of those episodes to get more information. I think that episode talks about various types of prompts. And the one I'm going to talk about today is like a physical prompt, which I actually think is like the least recommended type. Ideally, you have a prompt that's sort of a sequence-based prompt of, okay, I'm doing this habit, and then I kind of stack something else on top of it. Like I take my supplements, and then I know I'm going to have my lemon water. And it just kind of becomes this routine because you're doing these things every day and you're doing them back to back to back. So you kind of have this sequence. And today, what I wanted to talk about is having physical reminders in your space that remind you to do something. And the reason I actually didn't even have this lined up to record today, but I record in this little corner office of our house. I have a, mic set up and this little, it's my office. I don't always sit in here, but when I record, I have to just because of the microphone and such. But next to my office, literally as I'm coming into my office, I have to step over this mini trampoline, which I think I've talked in the past that I had it. And I was trying different ways of, figuring out how to get the habit of, I don't want to do the rebounding for 20 minutes. I don't have time for that. I'm not that committed to spending a lot of time on a mini trampoline, but I like the idea of doing, 3 to 5 minutes once or twice a day just to get my blood flowing, have that kind of more high intense cardio since most of my workouts are walking, sometimes weightlifting, depending on where I'm at with that. But I like and it's really supposed to be good for your lymph flow. So I've been wanting to do more time on the mini tramp. And again, very like the bar is low here, right? Just a few minutes a day. For a while, I was trying to kind of do that habit stack of like, well, after my walk, I'll just go in there and do it. But oftentimes that's the morning and I start kind of getting pulled in different directions and it just doesn't happen. Having it right next to my desk though, I found has been awesome because like I said, when I am going to my desk, I have to either walk over it or around it, or I'm going to just trip, right? So what I find is when I'm headed to my desk, before I jump in to say record these episodes, I just do some jumping. And It does a few things. One, it helps kind of create this barrier of like, okay, before I head into work, let me just kind of, zone out on my mind, like refresh my mind and get ready for a new task. And before I'm sitting down in a work chair, like getting that blood flowing. I think before I used to sometimes before I would record podcasts, more so like interviews, like if I had an interview coming up with someone and I'd been working all morning, I would try and like kind of take 10 minutes before that interview to stand up and jump around. And sometimes I'd play some music and try and just something to have more energy, right? Like you don't want to go into an interview with someone and be blah. But with this tramp right here, I just find that as I'm coming into my office, I just come and jump on it and it gets the blood flowing. And so that got me thinking, we haven't talked about, this type of habit or, trick to get yourself to do something. And I say tricking myself, it's something I want to do. So it's not necessarily a trick, but it is sort of this like weird mind game. And some of the others, so I was trying to think if there were other things that I'm doing that kind of were similar, right? Like were physical reminders of like, hey, I want to do this and make it a priority. So another thing I thought of was with my skincare. I have a drawer and everything's like neatly organized. And I found that it's nice because all I have to do is remember to do the skincare, but like I don't forget any of the pieces because they're all there. They're all in the drawer. They're all visible. It's all lined up. And even on top of that, I have a mask that I would like to do 1 or 2 times a week. I don't always remember, but I often do because I'm opening that drawer and it's neatly stacked next to my other pieces of my routine. So it's kind of this like physical reminder of like, oh yeah, I want to do this sometime this week. And then it sometimes ends up happening. And if it doesn't, that's fine. It's like some of these things like, well, you could write a checklist, but are you going to look at it? And I think sometimes just that physical reminder does, help. And with meal prep, some things that we've talked about over the years of like, how do you start this process of meal prep? And on the weekends, some things I will do is if I know if it's Saturday, say, and I'm like, I just want to chop my vegetables and I'm off kind of running with the kids and starting my day. What I'll sometimes do at breakfast is set all of the vegetables out on the counter or even like sit them all in the sink and wash them, like soak them in a big tub. So then when I'm coming back into the kitchen and I am sort of on this like weekend family time thing where, my days can kind of escape me, I'm seeing physically, oh, those vegetables are there. I have to do it. It's kind of like the unfolded laundry that's sitting on your counter. I'm not going to let it sit there that long. I'm going to fold it because I don't want it to sit there for very long. So I find that kind of if I want to do little pieces of meal prep and instead of just like a whole session, just setting the piece that I want to get done there can be helpful. If I do want to do a full meal prep session, like sometime during the day, I'm not always scheduling a specific time. It's more like, okay, before the end of the day, I want to get this done. I'll set the printed meal plan on the counter. Again, it's a physical reminder. So every time I go in the kitchen, I'm reminded like, oh yeah, I want to get to that today. I heard years ago from a Prep Dish subscriber, or you know what? I think it might have actually been one of the gals that works at Prep Dish. I can't remember who though. And she said what she would do is set out her knife. If she just put her knife on the counter, that would remind her, oh yeah, today I'm going to chop my vegetables. And that was like kind of her little physical reminder throughout the day of this is how I'm going to get this done. Calendar reminders are great for me throughout the week. If I want to do something during the week, I always put it on my calendar, whether it's like an errand or like sometimes just like simple things, because I know I'm going to look at that or my day planner. But again, the weekend, because I'm so wrapped up with family time and the kids, it's a lot easier to miss things that are, even if it's on my calendar, like a scheduled call, like, I don't work calls on the weekend, but sometimes it'll just be like something and it's like, commitments on the weekend are much harder to keep track of because I'm not, at my computer or looking at my calendar. Even setting phone alarms for anything that I want to do for the day. If I have told someone, hey, I'm going to call you at this time, I will often set an alarm on my phone. So then it goes off 5 minutes before I'm like, oh, okay, yep, I'm supposed to, FaceTime call with one of the grandparents or something like that. So I use a lot of different tricks. And I think it just depends on the task of what I'm wanting to do. Like, what is the habit? Is it wanting to do a FaceTime call with the grandparents? And if so, maybe setting that, alarm on my phone is helpful. And it's a bonus because it's on my phone. So then I have to go find my phone because the alarm's going off. And then I can make the call because it's on the phone. So, there's all of these different habits and tasks that are kind of swimming around. And I think part of it's just what are the things that are important to me right now in my life, and how can I make it easy for myself? I don't want to, going back to jumping on the mini trampoline, like, how can I make this where it's easy? I don't have to use a lot of brain power. It's just like, okay, when I walk into my office, I'm going to do it. If I'm not in my office, that's fine. I'm just going to skip that day because, again, it's not something that I'm worried about doing every day. It's just something that I like doing during a work day to keep my blood flowing and keep my energy up. So I guess my challenge to you today is think through, like, are there some habits that you're wanting to instill in your life? And if so, what are some ways that you can rearrange that habit, either within your day, or are there little reminders that you can put out to help you and make it easy, right? Like, make things easy on you, and then it's going to just fall into place a lot better than if you're, making, it's like, sometimes it's like we make these things impossible to do. And it's like, oh, well, shoot, I wanted to work out today. Well, did you do anything to make that easy on yourself? And if not, then maybe thinking through, like, okay, well, how can I make this easier for myself and make sure that it happens and make sure that I'm reminded at the time I need to be reminded. And again, if you are interested in this topic, I recommend you go back to those podcasts from, I think it was like almost 2 years ago now. I did a multiple episode series on tiny habits and how to, kind of figure out ways to start doing those healthy habits that you are wanting to incorporate in your life. Okay, that's all I have for today's episode. A reminder that if you want to try out our meal plans, head to prepdish.com/MPM. Even better, if you're going to try out our meal plans, I really recommend, if you're going to do that free trial and have 14 days for free, think through before you start, how can I make sure that I'm trying these out in the next 2 weeks, right? Look at your calendar, do the free trial within a 2-week period where you're going to need meals at home. And then kind of even, look at your calendar. Where can I schedule this in? How can I make sure I'm not just signing up for the service, but I'm actually going to try it and see how it works in my life? Okay, so if you are a regular listener, I just want to do that last reminder to leave ratings and reviews if you have not already. It just helps a lot to get this podcast out to more people. I really appreciate those. And I will be back again next Monday with another episode.